Thank you for everything until now. I said those words to my husband, handed him the divorce papers, and left the house. My husband is a workaholic who can't do a single thing around the house. Without me, he must be in trouble. You should realize how helpless you are. My name is Layla. I quit my job right after I got married and became a housewife. My husband Nicholas was my former boss, who had a reputation for being quite good at his job. Ever since I started working for Nicholas, he'd been helping me a lot. He was always there for me when I needed support. Eventually, we started going out for drinks. After that, we started dating without telling the company. We told the company when we decided to get married. When I opened up about my marriage with Nicholas, the female co-workers around me were quite envious. Nicholas wanted me to quit the job and become a housewife, so that's what I did. However, once we started married life, Nicholas gradually began to look down on me.
You're so lucky to be able to eat with just lounging around at home, aren't you? Who do you think you owe that kind of life to? You should be thankful to me.
If I went out on a weekday, he'd always look unpleased.
Going out for lunch while I'm at work? Who the hell pays for the lunch? Think about it.
I couldn't be bothered to go out with Nicholas in mind, so I gradually grew to stay home more often. Would I spend the rest of my life just sitting at home waiting for Nicholas to come home? No way. I was beginning to think that I couldn't go on like this. With a sense of crisis, I decided to work. But Nicholas wouldn't allow me to work part-time.
You're going to work? You're not happy with my salary?
It's not that. I was desperate to clear up his misunderstanding. It just feels so suffocating to stay home all the time.
You just want to work to take a break from staying at home. Don't you think you are taking the world too lightly?
He accused me like that. But if I backed down now, nothing would change. I tried my best to persuade Nicholas. Finally, after all my hard work, Nicholas agreed for me to work part-time, on the condition that I would not cut any corners in the housework. I was nervous about working outside the home for the first time in a long time. But it was a refreshing feeling for me since I had always stayed inside the house. I tried my best to do the housework after my part-time job, so Nicholas would not complain. I was exhausted at first, but gradually, I found a pace that was right for me. It was around that time that Nicholas' mother passed away. I told my employer the news and asked if I could take some time off until things settled down, and they graciously agreed. I traveled back and forth between his parents' house and my own to take care of my father-in-law's personal needs and to prepare for the funeral. After the funeral, Nicholas said,
From now on, you only need to go to my parents' house every other day. You don't have to do the cleaning and laundry every day, right? You can make extra food for my dad, so that he would just have to heat it up before he eats.
He seems to be worried that I would neglect taking care of our house by going to his parents' house every day. If I have to take care of my father-in-law every other day for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be able to work part-time anymore. When I complained to Nicholas about this, he responded with a tedious look on his face.
It's the same with or without one or two part-timers, right? Why don't you ask them to reduce the number of days you have to go? And if they say that it's not possible, why don't you just quit? It doesn't make much money anyway. It's just a way for you to relax.
I had no choice but to reduce the number of days and continue working part-time. I felt bad to have to ask them to adjust so many times. I wish my father-in-law could at least take care of himself. But my father-in-law is stubborn. and says that it's a woman's job to take care of the house. He refuses to do any of the cleaning or laundry. And he is very picky about the taste of his food. Even if I cook something for him, he says it tastes too strong or he wants something else. Thanks to this, on the days I went to my father-in-law's house, I often came home late. One day, my father-in-law said that he didn't want to eat stew 2 days in a row, so I made him another meal and thus, I came home very late.
You're so late. What are you doing? Where's my food?
Nicholas, who had already come home, shouted angrily. I'm sorry. Your father wanted something else to eat, so I had to make another meal again in a hurry. I will get dinner ready right away. I served the stew I brought back to him.
What the hell? You promised you'd take care of the house like you've always done, right? If this happens again, I will have you quit your part-time job.
Wait a minute. The reason I'm late is because I was at your father's house. This has nothing to do with my work.
Shut up. You can't afford to get dinner ready because you work part-time. Don't make me wait for you after I'm tired from my work day.
I didn't agree, but I knew he wouldn't listen to my arguments. I continued to sleep less to do housework, take care of my father-in-law, and work part-time. Then one day, I received a rare phone call from my mother. Layla, your father has been diagnosed with a disease, and he's going to be hospitalized. She said that my father's cancer was spread pretty badly, and that it was already beyond treatment. I wanted to come over right away, but Nicholas wouldn't take me up on it at all.
What can be cured can't be cured, just because you went to visit him. You've got to take care of the house.
I had no choice but to leave work early to visit my father. It was 6 months later that my father took his last breath. I made arrangements for the funeral on behalf of my mother, who was too shocked to do anything, and told my husband the date of the funeral.
So, you will be back by the time I get back, right?
He asked me coercively.
I don't want to have to wait for dinner again like I did the other night, okay?
What? You're going to attend the funeral too, right?
Huh? Of course I can't. It's a weekday, right? I have to work.
My father passed away. Shouldn't you be able to take the day off for bereavement leave?
Well, technically it's possible. But I have an important meeting. I can't take the day off that easily.
Easy? When a family member dies, your priority is to send them off, right? After your mother passed away, I had to take days off in addition to bereavement leave. And even now, I have to work less, you know. Nicholas snickered when he heard those words.
Don't compare your part-time job to my job. I have more responsibility than you will ever understand. I can't just take a day off like you work for fun.
I persisted, and he finally relented, as if it was too much trouble to talk back.
I will take a half day off if you insist.
With that, Nicholas forcefully ended the conversation. I had to go to my parents' house more often to prepare for the funeral, and I had to take more days off from my part-time job. I visited my father-in-law every 3 days, and I only could do housework for our house every 3 days as well. Nicholas became even more unsatisfied.
Hey, you've been slacking on the housework lately, haven't you? You haven't cleaned the house for the last 2 days.
That's because... I tried desperately to explain to him. 2 days ago, I was at my parents' house from morning till night helping my mother. And yesterday I was at your father's.
An excuse again? My dad's a man, so it's natural that you need to go do the housework for him. Your mother has been doing chores until now, right? What else is there to do for her?
She's so shocked by what happened. that she doesn't have the energy to cook by herself. And preparing for the funeral is a burden for her to do alone. I just want to be there for her as much as possible. He told me that I was far too soft on her.
Your father didn't die suddenly either. I'm sure she was prepared for it from the moment he was diagnosed. And yet, she was so shocked that she can't do anything on her own. She's so naive to not think about the future. Why are women like that?
How can you? Even if she knew his future was short because of his illness. Her husband of many years passed away, you know. You at least understand how my mother feels, don't you?
I'm telling you to accept the reality. He should have better prepared for his passing. It's irresponsible of him to go off on his own without training his wife.
That's no way to talk about them. Don't you have any respect for my family? Nicholas looked at me, quietly angry inside, and said in a mocking tone,
What part of your family do I have to respect? If I have to respect them just because they are older, isn't the thought of that naive?
I can't believe he would even say something like that, not only about my mother, but also about my father who died after a battle with illness. It was at this point that I completely gave up on Nicholas. Enough. I don't want to talk to this man anymore. Just being in the same space bugs me. I started preparing to leave the house quietly, disguising it between helping for the funeral preparation. I moved my belongings into my parents' house little by little so that he wouldn't notice. It was painful to tell my mother about my current situation, since she had just lost her husband. But I couldn't take it anymore. I told my mother that I'm having difficulty getting along with Nicholas, and that I want to leave house to return to my parents' house. My mother consoled me by saying, You've worked very hard, Layla. If you want to come home, you're more than welcome. I won't be so lonely with you here. Thank you, Mom. I think it's better for you to be free of Nicholas than pushing yourself to live together. I'm sure you will find happiness in your new life without Nicholas. With these words from my mother, I was ready to leave the house. After that, I was mindless at home and perfectly took care of my father-in-law. I am only a few days away from being free from my husband. As long as I did the housework properly, Nicholas never complained, and we didn't need to have unnecessary conversations. The day of the funeral, Nicholas went to work that day without even saying goodbye. So Nicholas did decide to go to work. My mother was disappointed. Even though she's heard about it from me, she thought he would take a day off from work at least for a time like this. That's what she was hoping for. Do you understand now? He's like that. In response to my cold remarks, my mother responded with, If that's the case, I guess it can be helped. We were once again convinced that I hadn't made the right decision in divorcing Nicholas. After the funeral, Nicholas returned from work as usual.
I'm home.
Oh, you're back. Nicholas yelled at me as I answered him curtly.
You're back? Is that all? Whose fault is it that I had to take half of the day off today? You should thank me first.
Thank you?
Yeah, that's right. Your family interfered with my work. Now say it.
Nicholas was sprawled out on the couch, waiting for me to say something. I'll bow to him. Thank you for everything until now.
Yes. You should have been humble like that from the beginning. Then I wouldn't have said anything either. Huh? What did you just say? Until now? What do you mean?
I immediately passed him the divorce papers as he looked puzzled.
What? Divorce papers? What does this mean?
It means exactly what it says. Divorce. Then Nicholas suddenly burst into laughter.
Ha ha ha! You can't live without my money. What are you talking about? If you've got time to joke around like this, get on with making my meal.
I'm serious. I'm leaving here and going to live at home with my mother. My mother has agreed as well. I have some money saved up from my part-time job. They're even considering making me a full-time employee if I agree.
What? A full-time job? An idiot like you?
Well then, I handed the divorce papers to Nicholas and left home with one briefcase in my hand. When I arrived at my parents' house, I fell asleep while talking with my mother about the hardships I had gone through and the memories with my father. After that, Nicholas tried to contact me several times, but I ignored all of them. The messages were still supercilious.
You're an unfit wife to leave your husband like that. If you apologize and come back, I will forgive you this time.
It's no wonder I had no interest in replying to his messages. Even if I ignored the messages, Nicholas never came to my parents' house. He would have been too proud to pick up his wife himself. Thanks to him, my mother and I were able to lead a peaceful life. A few days later, I realized I had forgotten something and sneaked back home while Nicholas was at home. Looking at the house after a few days, the house was in a terrible state. The house was covered in trash and this, and there was no place to walk. The kitchen was littered with delivery food trash, and wrinkled clothes were all over the floor. I had expected this, but it seems that he does not do any housework at all. Come to think of it, I wondered how his father was doing. I became curious and wandered around Nicholas' parents' house. There, I came across my father-in-law and the owner of the house talking at the entrance. Apparently, the neighbors had complained about the strange smell coming from his room, which had been turned into the garbage dump.
If the situation doesn't improve, you're going to have to leave. Alright, I will go to my son's place then.
That's what my father-in-law told the owner of the house. His son's place? Even if he goes to Nicholas' place, it's just one more man who can't take care of the housework. I think it's just adding more garbage, according to what the neighbors told me after that. He apparently packed up his stuff and went to stay with Nicholas. But Nicholas refused his father to move in and had a small fight. The neighbors were unhappy over their argument, and Nicholas had no choice but to give in. It was good that they decided to live together, but as expected, Nicholas' house was trashed and there was a strange smell in the neighborhood. Nicholas started going to work in a wrinkled, dirty shirt. His reputation among the people around him has been declining rapidly. Finally, there was even talk of a demotion, and Nicholas came to me to apologize.
Layla, I'm sorry.
Nicholas, he finally understood. That's what I thought.
Are you done now?
He said it like he was belittling me.
I apologize for once. Just get yourself in a better mood and come back.
Nothing had changed. What the hell are you apologizing for?
Huh? What are you talking about?
It wasn't a performance with no feeling, was it? Nicholas fell silent at my calm tone. Please go home alone. I have no intention of returning to that house.
But the house is a mess without you. I even have to take care of my dad.
I knew you would say something like that. The only reason you want to take me back is so I can take care of you and your dad. Isn't that right?
No, well...
I know you think you're a good worker. But no matter how good you are at your job, if you can't take care of yourself, you're no better than an elementary student.
What? What? How dare you talk to your husband like that?
You're not my husband. Ex-husband, because I'm divorcing you. So we are strangers now.
Wait a minute. I'm not divorcing you.
I'm not your slave, so shut up. You always look down on all housewives. An old-fashioned man like you should be buried in a stinking garbage dump with your father. Don't ever come near me again. You're just a lousy man who has nothing better to do than to be bossy. I drove Nicholas away angrily and immediately locked the house. I turned around and my mother applauded. Well said. I then moved on to divorce settlement. Fortunately, the negotiation for the full-time position went smoothly. I will be able to earn enough money to live with my mother. My mother, who had been depressed after the loss of my father, is gradually regaining her energy now that I have come back. She and I are enjoying our life together now. According to the lawyer, Nicholas and my former father-in-law are still living in that dump. They are looked down upon by the neighbors as a father and son who can't even take care of themselves. Because of the garbage, Nicholas can't sleep well and is always short of sleep. As a result, he has trouble concentrating and made an unforgivable mistake at work. He was forced to resign from his job to take responsibility. Now that they can no longer afford to hire a housekeeper, they do not have a bright future ahead of them. Now I feel like a fool for trying so hard to please Nicholas. I'm very happy to have escaped from the life of putting up with so much. From now on, I will live my own life to the fullest.